There's a type of intelligence no one talks about. You don't learn it in school, you don't read it in textbooks. No professor teaches it. No motivational speaker will admit it exists. But once you feel it in someone, you never forget it. It's not loud, it doesn't shine, it doesn't need validation. It slips into the room unnoticed, but leaves with everything. This isn't charm, this isn't charisma, this is something else. Something darker. You've seen it before. The man who never raises his voice but still owns the whole room. The woman who smiles at everyone, but somehow controls the decisions behind closed doors. They don't argue. They don't beg. They don't chase. They just watch. They speak only when necessary, and when they do, their words cut straight through the air like steel. Sharp, surgical, undeniable. This is dark intelligence. And once you understand how it works, you won't see people the same way again. Because this kind of mind doesn't play defense. It doesn't get emotional. It doesn't expose itself. It positions. It waits. And then, it strikes. Machiavelli didn't admire intellect for how bright it was. He admired it for how dangerous it was. He valued the kind of intelligence that could control kings, turn loyalty into leverage, and win wars without ever being seen. And if you've always felt different, not softer but sharper, then this video is for you. Because once you tap into this mindset, you'll never be ordinary again. They won't tell you this, not in school, not in books, not in polite society. Because if people knew how dark intelligence really works, they'd fear you, long before you ever lifted a finger. See, you don't start by being smart. You start by being quiet. You watch, you listen, you observe. You begin to notice the little cracks in people's stories, the micro delays when they lie, the way they try too hard when they feel insecure. You smile at jokes that aren't funny, not because you're amused, but because you're studying the room. You're not cold yet, but you're getting there. Because the world around you is insane. People argue over nothing. They fight for illusions. They lie to protect their image. They scream to hide the fact they're breaking down inside. You start to notice the code underneath the chaos. One simple truth hits you like a hammer. People are predictable when they feel safe. And that's when you move in, not loudly, not aggressively, silently. You start asking the right questions, not to connect, but to watch people reveal what they're hiding. You let them speak first, you let them try to impress you. You give them just enough silence to make them nervous. You watch their emotions write their confessions, all while you sit still collecting everything. This is when your mind begins to evolve. You stop seeing people for who they pretend to be. You start seeing utility, weakness, leverage, risk. You spot the liar before they speak. You feel the betrayal before it happens. You recognize fear behind fake confidence. You become 5 seconds faster than everyone else. Not because you read more books, not because you're louder, but because your mind isn't emotional anymore. It's tactical. This is the turning point. Not when you get smarter, but when you stop being naive. You realize truth doesn't matter as much as belief. Trust is just a tool. Most people are lying, to you and to themselves. And if you can shape their illusions, you can shape their world. That's the core of dark intelligence. It's not IQ, it's not charm, it's not hustle. It's control through perception. You begin to speak differently, not to express, but to influence. Every word becomes deliberate. Every silence becomes pressure. You drop truths like poison, slow, untraceable, irreversible. You stop defending yourself. You stop explaining. You stop reacting. You start redesigning the game on your terms. You don't announce your goals. You don't show your full mind. You don't reveal your pain. Pain becomes data. Anger becomes analysis. Sadness becomes strategy. This is the phase Machiavelli respected the most. The silent metamorphosis. When a person stops trying to fit into a broken world and starts learning how to quietly reshape it. And the best part? Nobody notices. They still think you're quiet. They still think you're harmless. They have no idea they've already been outmaneuvered. Because while they were talking, you were preparing. And now, you don't need permission. You don't need recognition. You are the power. This is how dark intelligence is born. Not in applause, but in the long, still hours of watching, learning, and building a mind so dangerous, it never needs to announce itself. You've crossed a line now. You don't react like you used to. You don't chase approval. You don't explain yourself. You just sit back, and watch. You're not just intelligent anymore. You're becoming dangerous. But what does that actually mean? It means you're developing a set of traits that most people fear, even if they can't explain why. Each one is quiet, each one is subtle, and each one is a weapon. Let's break them down. Trait 1. Emotional disconnection. This is the first thing people notice about you, and they don't like it. You don't flinch when insulted. You don't panic under pressure. You don't melt under guilt. Why? Because you've detached. You're not suppressing emotions. You're studying them. Anger doesn't drive you. It informs you. Sadness doesn't control you. It turns into strategy. Fear becomes foresight. You've stopped letting emotion choose your actions and started using it to predict theirs. While they scream, break down, and beg for validation, you sit in silence, calculating, and that silence, that's not emptiness. That's the sound of a mind sharpening there. Trait 2. Surgical observation. You don't just look at people anymore, you dissect them. You study their hands when they speak, their eyes when they lie, the tone of voice they use when they want something from you. You hear what isn't said. You feel the shift in energy when they're hiding something. You don't need them to confess, you already know. And that unnerves people, because around you they feel exposed, even when you haven't said a word. They don't know why. They just sense you see too much. Machiavelli once said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." You understand this now. You expect betrayal, so you watch for it before it forms. You don't get caught off guard. You're already 3 moves ahead. Trait 3. Controlled presence. You don't need to be loud to be noticed. Your silence is louder than most people's screaming. Why? Because you don't enter a room trying to impress. You enter the room to become unreadable. You've learned the power of mystery. You reveal just enough to provoke curiosity, but never enough to be understood. And people fear what they don't understand. You're not trying to be the most visible. You're trying to be the one they notice when you're absent. That's presence, and rarity is power. You're not accessible. You're a luxury. Trait 4. Strategic speech. You don't speak to fill space anymore. You speak to plant ideas. Every word has weight. Every pause is intentional. Most people talk to be heard. You speak to influence, quietly. You let others talk first. You let them reveal themselves. And when you finally speak, the conversation shifts in your direction, not through argument, but through subtle manipulation. You know when to compliment, when to question, when to say absolutely nothing. And that restraint, that's where your influence lives. They don't even realize they're following your lead, because it feels like their idea. Trait 5. Unshakable self-reliance. This is the one that breaks most people. They need approval. They need praise. They need to be liked. You don't. You've become your own source of validation. You don't beg for clarity. You don't argue for respect. You don't plead for loyalty. If something feels off, you just vanish. Not to punish them, but because you don't tolerate noise. You move like a ghost. You appear when it's strategic. You disappear when your absence says more than your words ever could. People can't manipulate you with guilt. They can't bait you with attention. They can't control you, because you've already walked away in your mind. This is what makes you dangerous. You don't need anything from them, and the person who needs nothing can't be controlled by anything. These 5 traits don't make you emotionless. They make you unshakable. You're no longer trying to win people over. You're not trying to prove anything, you're just watching, calculating, discerning, quietly bending the environment in your favor. And people feel it, even if they don't know why. They feel the tension. They sense the distance. They don't know what you're thinking, and that makes them nervous. That's dark intelligence, and you're just getting started. Dark intelligence is useless unless you use it. Traits without execution? Just a secret, a sharp blade still in its sheath. But now, your mind has changed. You see more. You feel more. And you're ready to move from observation to manipulation. Here's how you use dark intelligence every day, in every room, without ever being detected. 1. Control conversations without dominating them. Most people speak to win. You don't. You speak to guide. You let others talk. You let them expose themselves. You let them believe they're in control. And while they talk, you collect. You ask questions that feel innocent, but they cut deep. Why do you think that? How did that make you feel? What happened after that? These aren't random, they're diagnostic tools. People drop their defenses when they feel heard. But you're not listening for empathy, you're locating leverage, and once you find it, you say just enough to shift their thinking, never enough to reveal your own. You're not in the conversation, you're controlling it from the inside. 2. Use silence as pressure. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it, to explain, to justify, to beg. You don't. You use silence like a weapon. Someone tries to manipulate you. Say nothing. Let them drown in their own guilt. Let the quiet expose their insecurity. They expect resistance. You give them stillness. And that stillness feels like power because it is. Pause before you speak. Hold eye contact a second too long. Let them feel seen. That discomfort? That's control. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't argue. But they felt you, and that's all it takes. 3. Mirror their emotions and then redirect them if someone is angry. Match their tone. If they're proud, play humble. If they're insecure, act unsure. Then flip it. Redirect the anger to a third party. Redirect the pride into your goal. Redirect the insecurity by offering a false sense of safety. You don't push people. You let them walk themselves into your strategy. They'll think it was their idea. They'll believe they're in control. And all you did was hold up a mirror. This is manipulation without confrontation, subtle, painless, and visible. 4. Reveal your intentions after you've already won. Most people can't help but talk. They announce their plans. They over-explain their motives. They want to be understood. You let them guess. You let them misunderstand you. You let them write the wrong story in their head. Then when it's too late, when everything falls in your favor, you reveal the truth quietly, coldly, and they realize they were part of your plan all along. Nothing haunts someone more than realizing they helped build their own defeat. That's the power of timing. You don't need to make threats. The outcome speaks for you. 5. Never use power emotionally. This is where most people fail. They get emotional. They lash out. They want revenge. You don't. You remove people quietly. You correct situations surgically. No outbursts, no drama, no mess. Just a clean exile. They cross a line. You don't react in the moment. You wait. You gather. You strike when it benefits you, not your ego. Because dark intelligence isn't about punishing people. It's about realigning the board. You're not playing with emotion anymore. You're playing with precision. When you move, people feel like the universe corrected them, not like you did. That's the difference between revenge and power. 6. Hide your depth. Never reveal the full extent of your mind. People respect intelligence, but they fear what they don't understand. So give them 60%. Just enough to seem sharp, never enough to seem dangerous. Let them think they figured you out. Let them feel safe, because people get sloppy when they feel safe, and that's when you make your move. Let them talk too much. Let them walk into your trap. Let them help build their own downfall, while thinking they're outsmarting you. This is how you win without ever looking like a threat. You don't need status, you don't need attention, you don't need a throne. Your power is in your invisibility. Dark intelligence doesn't come with applause. No one sees the work. No one notices the planning. No one recognizes the silent moves. But the results speak. The room listens when you speak. The outcome bends when you move, and the world starts to adapt around you. Because you don't need control. You are control. This is what Machiavelli understood. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But when you operate with dark intelligence, you don't need either. They don't love you. They don't fear you. They just know. You're watching. You're calculating. You're already 3 steps ahead. And by the time they understand what you are, it's already too late. Real intelligence, the kind that makes people afraid of you, doesn't show up in test scores or debates. It shows up in moments of silence, when you don't react, when you don't explain, when you simply observe and wait. Because most people need to be understood. They need to correct others. They need to speak to prove they exist, but not you. Machiavelli understood the power of invisibility. He wrote about seeming harmless while building a sharp, calculated mind in the background. People expect intelligence to be flashy, but truly dangerous intelligence is unreadable. It's the guy who lets others think he's weak, who never brags, never oversteps, never reveals his cards until it's too late. This is the intelligence that makes rulers sleep with one eye open, because they don't know what you're thinking, and that means you already have the upper hand. Now let's go deeper. Do not react. Observe. Adapt. The weak respond to everything. The dangerous filter everything. Machiavelli knew that intelligence isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing what not to show. When someone insults you, you don't react. When someone praises you, you don't get excited. You watch. You learn. Because every emotional reaction reveals your pressure points. And if they know your pressure points, they know how to manipulate you. But if you remain still, you become impossible to control. You become untouchable. This is what Machiavelli meant when he warned, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." And that's the point. Your power comes from the fact that no one truly sees you. Mental flexibility is power. Machiavelli didn't believe in rigid principles. He believed in adaptability. If you want to survive in this world, you have to become psychologically amphibious, able to move through different environments, roles, and masks without losing your core. That's what intelligence means in a Machiavellian world. Not moral consistency, but strategic consistency. A flexible mind wins. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, sometimes you're quiet, sometimes you speak boldly, but at all times, you're aware. Because intelligence without awareness is just arrogance, and Machiavelli despised arrogance. He believed the most powerful man in the room is rarely the loudest. He's the one who knows when to be silent, the one who watches others burn themselves out trying to be clever, while he reserves his fire for the final move. Machiavelli's law: make yourself useful, then indispensable. If you really want to become dangerously smart, you have to understand one core rule. You must become useful to others, but never in a way that makes you replaceable. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should appear generous, loyal, and honorable, but only if it secures his power, only if it's calculated. In modern terms, be the person people rely on, but always have leverage. You can be valuable, just never be dependent. You want to build a mind that others need but can't manipulate. You want them to fear the thought of losing your presence, even if they don't understand why. This is how you make people play by your rules, without them even realizing the game has changed. Final shift: the intelligence that no one expects. Here's the truth Machiavelli never said outright, but lived through every word he wrote. The most dangerous mind is not the one that overpowers others. It's the one that disappears into the crowd and silently rewrites the rules from the shadows. It's not about being the king. It's about being the one who makes the king dance. You can't spot him. You don't even know he's there. But he's the reason you lost. He's the reason you're confused. He's the reason everything went quiet. This is who you become. When you stop chasing validation, when you stop proving your worth, when you stop performing intelligence and start embodying it. Machiavelli knew you don't have to be seen to have power. You just have to be smart enough to disappear right before the shift, when you no longer need to be understood, when your actions are deliberate but your motives invisible. You've entered the final stage of intelligence. Machiavelli didn't just admire brilliance. He admired brilliance that disappeared into the fog. He believed the smartest people weren't the loudest. They weren't the ones on stage, performing intelligence like a talent show. They were the ones behind the curtain, watching, measuring, deciding the fate of those who thought they were in control. A prudent man should always follow in the footsteps of great men and imitate those who have been supreme. But imitation isn't about copying. It's about absorbing what worked and discarding what revealed too much. This is where most people fail. They become smart enough to learn, but not quiet enough to protect what they've learned. They study power, but forget how power is destroyed by visibility. They become proud of their sharpness, and that pride is exactly what dulls the blade. A truly dangerous mind doesn't flaunt itself. It camouflages. It lets others underestimate it. It smiles when it's doubted. It plays average while thinking 10 moves ahead. Because the real game, it's not in being impressive. It's in being invisible and still in control. Once you've reached this level, intelligence becomes less about what you know and more about what you don't show. You begin to understand what Machiavelli meant when he said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Let them judge. Let them guess. Let them assume they figured you out. You don't correct them. You don't clarify. You don't feed their curiosity. You let them stay confused while you move in silence. Because mystery is leverage, and a man who can weaponize uncertainty becomes untouchable. This is the paradox of high intelligence. The smarter you get, the quieter you become. Not because you're scared, not because you're passive, but because you've seen what happens when people know too much about you. You've learned that transparency makes you predictable, and predictability is how smart people get played. So you erase your tells. You let go of the need to correct every misunderstanding. You stop performing like some circus act desperate to be recognized as a genius. You start thinking like a shadow. You make people unsure whether you're the threat or the ally, the puppet or the puppeteer. That uncertainty becomes your shield, because when no one knows what you're thinking, they don't know how to stop you. And here's the part most people miss. The more powerful your mind becomes, the less it needs attention. This is what separates dangerous intelligence from performative intelligence. Performative intelligence wants applause. Dangerous intelligence wants freedom. Performative intelligence wins arguments. Dangerous intelligence wins outcomes. Performative intelligence quotes Machiavelli. Dangerous intelligence becomes him. You don't need to out-talk people. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to disappear into your strategy. Let others chase recognition. Let them post, argue, debate, and try to be seen. You build, you wait, you adapt. And when the moment comes, when the opening reveals itself, you strike with such precision that people will say, "I didn't even see it coming." Exactly. They're not supposed to. That's how you become dangerously smart. Not by showing off, but by never being figured out, never being decoded, never being read until it's already too late. You're not a presence. They can't box you in. You're not a noise. They can't block you out. You're a silence that makes people nervous. You're a question mark that makes people hesitate. You're a mind they can't measure. And the more they try, the more they lose their balance. So here's the final truth. If you really want to think like Machiavelli, you have to stop trying to look smart and start becoming strategically unreadable. No one should know what you're planning. No one should know what you truly care about. No one should know what your next move is. Let your results be loud. Let you stay silent. That's not just intelligence, that's control. If you felt something shift in you while watching this, that's not an accident. That's your mind starting to recognize its potential. Its dark potential. Because there's a version of you that doesn't explain itself, that doesn't play by the rules, that doesn't chase validation or recognition. That version of you is waiting. And now, you've got the blueprint. You just have to follow through. Now listen carefully. If this video spoke to the part of you that's been hiding for too long, like this video to tell the algorithm this kind of content matters. Subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. Comment below. Let me know what hit you hardest and how you're going to apply it. And if you know someone who's ready to unlock this part of their mind, share this video with them. Be the one who plants the seed. You don't just want to be smart. You want to be the kind of smart that makes people uneasy. The kind of smart that never needs to raise its voice. The kind of smart that rewrites the rules quietly. That's who Machiavelli was speaking to. That's who you're becoming. We'll talk soon, but until then, stay quiet. Stay calculating. Stay dangerous.